Hello, and welcome back to the Lounge with Annette, and welcome to the book that I chose to read for the month of May. And the book that I chose was this one here, I Did It For You. The reason I chose this one is because it did pique my interest of a small time crime. So, out of the people who did comment on the chapter 1 video of this book, y'all all said it was promising. So I decided to go ahead and pick this one. All right. So for all my new subscribers, if you didn't go back to look at any of my other books that I read on my channel, what I do is I read a book every other month for the year of 2025. So this makes the third book. I read. It depends on the length of the chapters, and it depends on how long the book is. Sometimes I might release 2 videos, one at 3:30 and one at 6:30. If you don't see it at 3:30, you'll see it at 6:30, and vice versa. If you don't see it at 6:30, you might see it at 3:30, and again, you might see it both times. Okay, so my vocabulary is not extensive. So if there are any words that I come across, there will be a definition video after I read the chapter. And you'll know that it's a definition video because the chapter will have the letter D after it. And if there's any content that I need to warn you about, you will get a caution sign also in the description to let you know that the content is viewer discretion. Okay, so I'm not going to reread chapter 1 over. You can go back and listen to that chapter. So I'm definitely going to start at chapter 2. And are you ready? Let me get to chapter 2. Okay, chapter 2. How many meals had I eaten at our front porch table over the years? Hundreds, maybe even thousands. Brunch after church, back when we still darkened preachers' frog's doorstep. Grilled cheese and tomato soup on rainy childhood Saturdays when Eliza and I would pretend we were in a lifeboat sailing over stormy seas. Too many family dinners to count, birthdays, holidays, random Tuesday nights. One of Eliza's first date with Travis had been at this table, and the two of them sharing a pizza while our moms peeked through the living room curtain and giggled over glasses of wine, thrilled their children had chosen each other. So I thought the motions of setting the round table, carrying out a pitcher of water and basket of bread would come back to me. But turns out it wasn't like riding a bike. Every movement now unfamiliar and strange. Should I pull away the empty fourth chair where Eliza would never sit again? Should I space out the remaining 3 spots so her absence wouldn't be as obvious? In the end, I left the table as it was, 4th chair and no place set in front of it. Eliza was never coming back, but I didn't want to pretend like she never been here at all. My mom had always been a good cook in a hearty Midwestern way. Family dinners revolved around a generous cut of meat and enough starchy sides to feed an army. Some type of condensed soup laid in casserole was also a popular option, served alongside a salad made with iceberg lettuce and drenched in ranch or jello rice laced with canned fruit. In Kansas, we used the term salad loosely. And homemade dessert was an everyday occurrence rather than a special occasion treat. But tonight's dinner consisted of frozen lasagna, frozen lasagna heated up in an aluminum tin. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't complaining. The lasagna was hot and I didn't have to make it, but I wonder what my parents' meal were usually like now. The two of them in this big old house. Did they even eat together anymore? I could more easily picture my mother hunched over the kitchen sink with a sad sandwich in her hand while my father ate dinner upstairs alone. My throat tightened at the image. It was one thing for me to eat most of my meals solo. It was another to know my parents did the same. As kids, Eliza and I had made gagging noises every time our parents kissed in front of us. rolled our eyes, and squealed in disgust when they danced across the kitchen floor. Our dad's big hand skated dangerously close to our mother's backside. Despite our protests over their public display of affection, our parents' almost effortless connection had been something we secretly loved, a security blanket wrapped tight around our family. I'd hope, after everything, my parents would at least still have each other. But the last time I was home, they moved around each other with stiff, impersonal politeness, their interactions so stilted I could hardly bear to watch. And I doubted things had improved in the years since. Tonight, my dad joined us at the porch table, though, 5 minutes late and already 3 sheets to the wind. He didn't so much sit as sink into his chair, eyes glazed. I stared at him until he met my gaze. "Hey, Dad," I said, forking spearing a chunk of lasagna with a little too much force. "Greer," he said, the words drawn out like he wasn't entirely sure of my name. He waved away my mother's attempt to serve him, settled back in his chair, and gave me a faraway smile. "It's nice to have you home. It's been a long time." "It has," I agreed. I talked to my mother twice a month on the phone and saw her every spring when she visited me in Chicago for a long weekend, a trip that inevitably left me exhausted and depressed. I always picked a museum or landmark to take her to, a loud restaurant where our lack of conversation wouldn't be as obvious. I wanted to tell her she didn't need to bother coming, but wasn't sure if her face would register hurt or relief at the reprieve, and I didn't want to find out. And at least she made the effort. It had been more than 7 years since my father had come along, and time had not been kind to him since last we seen each other. It wasn't only the drinking that had aged him. He lost something vital when Eliza died. Not just his firstborn child, not just his beloved daughter, his belief in the fairness of the world. All my life he told me that if I did good, if I was good, then good would come to me. They weren't simply words he spoken. They were a creed he lived by, a fundamental truth he believed in, until the day Roy Matthews had made a bloody mockery of every syllable, had spit in the face of every kind and selfless deed my father had ever done. My dad didn't believe in anything anymore. He was still breathing, but he was the definition of a man going through the motions. He'd given up on life, on his family, on himself, and I would never forgive him for it. "Are you staying through the weekend?" my mom asked. "Too bad you won't be here longer. The fall festival is coming up. You always loved it when you were younger." As if I was going to put on a costume and get a pumpkin painted on my face like in the good old days. "Actually, I'm thinking of staying a few weeks, if that's okay." My mom lowered her fork, surprise floating across her face. She stopped expecting me to come home years ago, had almost too readily accepted the list of excuses I'd come up with. "I have exams. Work is crazy. A friend invited me to her house for the holidays," until both of us had simply ceased broaching the subject. "Of course it's all right. But what about your job?" "I took a little time off," I said. "Nothing to worry about. I needed a break." "And your boss doesn't have a problem with that?" I shook my head, shoved a bite of lasagna into my mouth. "How's the store? Are the new owners taking care of it?" My mom glanced at my dad, waiting to see if he'd answer, but he was busy staring off into the distance. They've changed a few things. You'll have to stop by and see." "Sure," I said, and I would, although I didn't want to. That store had been in the Dunny's family for 100 years. It was an institution in this town, or at least it had been, until my dad's drinking got in the way. Maybe he would have ended up selling even if Eliza hadn't died. Maybe neither Eliza nor I would have had any interest in staying in Ludlow and continuing the family business. But I like to think that would have felt like something we decided together instead of one more thing that simply happened to us. The rest of our dinner conversation consisted of the kind of surface small talk you engage in with strangers. It was worse, somehow, than silence would have been, each genetic question and response landing like an anvil inside of me. I knew we wouldn't talk about the latest murders or Eliza or the gaping wound that was our family. We never talked about anything important anymore. I tried to imagine how this scene might have played out if I'd been the one to die instead. Would my parents be as broken? Would Eliza have stayed in Ludlow to help? Would the three of them have somehow found the right words to say to one another in the aftermath? I'd never believed my parents had a favorite child, and I still didn't. Eliza hadn't been the son we all revolved around. She wasn't the gilded child. If I were the one in the town cemetery right now, I think our family would still be employed. The difference would have been Eliza. She was always the softer sibling, the one more likely to apologize first and take the high road. Of the two of us, she was the bigger person. If our positions had been reversed, she would have found a way to talk to our dad, encourage him to put down the bottle instead of sitting back and watching him stumble away from the table, a small, vicious part of her hoping he would trip and fall. She would have folded our mother's poor, abused fingers between her own and urged her to stop cleaning, to stop doing, and simply be. Eliza would have at least tried to make it better, understanding that the effort is sometimes worth more than the result. She would have managed to offer grace to our parents that I had never been able to find inside myself. Ooh. After dinner, I retreated to my room and finished unpacking, then sat on the bed, unsure of what to do next. In Chicago, I would have read a book, lost myself in a show I can binge without thinking. Gone for a walk on streets crowded with bodies, taking comfort in my anonymity. Yeah, I know the word. No one knew me, no one cared. But here, my mind was buzzing, a low-level hum boring under my skin. I couldn't settle down, the house too empty and still around me. I grabbed my car keys off the dresser and raced down the stairs. I thought about calling to my mom on my way out the front door, but the kitchen was dark, so I eased out without a goodbye. I drove down the main drag where 90% of Ludlow's comments was centered and clocked the changes the last 12 years had wrought. In a lot of ways, Ludlow was like many small, middle of nowhere Midwestern towns, barely hanging on. Each generation hemorrhaging more and more residents, kids graduating high school and disappearing into the wider world just as I had. Town surviving on the old timers who refused to let go, the folks who still managed to own farmland that hadn't been swooped up by the big architectural, or the ones who couldn't imagine themselves leaving a place where their great-grandparents had put down roots more than 100 years ago. The lucky few got jobs at the meatpacking plant 20 miles down the highway. The rest eked out a living any way they could. But all of it was just so much life support. Eventually, the plug would be pulled and Ludlow would fade away. Vacant buildings and a distant memory out on the prairie, a whole way of life that was never coming back. For now, the drugstore was still there, along with the credit union next door and the hardware store on the far corner. The gas station looked the same way as always, and I knew come morning the old timers would gather in a ring of lawn chairs on the cracked pavement out front to shoot the shit. The boutique was gone though, as was the electronics store and the deli. The beauty salon where I got an ill-advised bob in 6th grade now sported soaped over windows and a faded for lease sign tacked to the door. I slowed at a sad boutique of balloons floating inches above the sidewalk, a couple of roses strewn underneath. Next to them, flapping between two parking meters, was a small banner announcing a Virgil of Dylan Short and Addie Johnson, the latest gunshot lovers. Their photos were grainy and distorted, looking more like mug shots than memorials. I'm having a memorials. Sorry. You waited too long, their gazes accused. You waited too long, and now look what happened to us. Even as I drove away, their eyes followed me, burning into the back of my neck. I saved the grocery store for last, foot easing off the gas as I got closer, not quite ready to see. The hand-painting Dunning General sign had been replaced with a mass-produced IGA logo. They'd taken out the original front doors too. 100-year-old wood and glass that always stuck in humid weather. Now people entered the IGA through automatic sliding doors. A hiss of air and greeting instead of a tiny golden bell that used to ring out whenever anyone stepped inside. Maybe my dad had the right idea after all. Much more of this and I'd be picking up a bottle myself. I wasn't up to actually going inside the store yet, so I glided past, took a right at the corner and continued on Elm Street towards the park. The year Eliza and Travis died, the town put in a memorial bench in their honor. It wasn't placed in front of the parking spot where they died. Everyone agreed that would be tacky. The bench was across from the duck pond, and I'd never seen a single soul sitting on it. Like all of Eliza and Trent's bad luck had rubbed off on the wood and no one wanted to risk contamination. I pulled over across from the pond, could make out the bench silhouette in the small spill of night from the street lamp on the corner. I cracked my windows and the chill October night blew in the distant smell of burning leaves and the faint sound of laughter. Probably teenagers sneaking a few beers in the park shadows, ignoring their parents' pleas to stay home in the wake of the latest murders. I wondered if they'd be doing obligatory pre-Halloween Ludlow murder tour later, half-wasted with no business driving, squished into the front cab of somebody's beat-to-shit pickup truck. It's an October tradition around here, and retrospective of all Ludlow's bad seeds. Proof that not even sleepy small towns are immune from the worst of human nature. First stop, the White Bungalow on Ludcos, where 60-year-old George Weather chased his wife out of the house and gave her upwards of 20 hacks with an axe he kept next to the back door for splitting firewood. As a kid, whenever we drove down Locust, my mind conjured up pictures of Mrs. Weathers fleeing for her life, hearing the axe whistling through the air behind her, knowing what was coming, but too slow to outrun the blade. Story I'd always heard was that George killed her because he was sick of her burning his bacon. Next up was the historical mark out on Route 24, a 2-lane highway with gravel sides and wildflowers growing right up to the edges of the pavement. The metal sign on the side of the road memorialized Bloody Benders and a Kansas family of the late 1800s who lured weary travelers to their home with promises of food and lodging, only to bash their heads in and slit their throats before robbing them. Around here, we were weirdly proud of the Bloody Benders. They were practically a bedtime story. Final stop was the hulking remains of the shuttering oil refinery, former lifeblood of Ludlow, now a dilapidated eyesore. By the time I left town, some of the walls were starting to cave in. So a chain link fence topped with barbed wires had been erected around the perimeters. But that didn't stop us from sneaking inside to see the spot where the summer before I was born, Ludlow High's prom queen was found naked and strangled, dumped among the broken glass and chunks of concrete like one more piece of trash. People swore you could see the outline of her body on the dirty floor if you looked close enough. And now there was my sister and Travis, along with Dylan and Addie. Did the current high schoolers talk about how scary it must have been for Eliza, seeing Roy Matthews' hulky frame through the window, gun raised and pointed? Did they reenact the various murders from the front seat of the pickup, beer fume fogging up the glasses as they tried not to laugh? I could picture it so clearly, only because it used to be us. That's the thing about murder. It's all fun and games until it happens to you. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 2. Normally I have something to say, but I think that this is building up character and building up to let us know how things were back in the day, so we can have that implanted as we read along. So it's not really much that I have to say about it. But I hope they got all the, the details in this chapter, and get to some current events and stuff like that. So I don't know how many chapters it's going to take for that, but I'm hoping it's not to half of the book. But let me pump my brakes because I'm just starting. It's only chapter 2. So you know what? I'm going to end it here. I'm going to see you in the next chapter. Bye for now.